It's my pleasure to welcome Lynton Arney to the stage to wrap up this section around reproduction, and very well qualified to do so. Lynton, well known to many of you from the Inverbrackie Border Leicester stud. He runs with his wife Claire down at Strathalbyn in South Australia, and Lynton's had a very long association with genetic evaluation, going right back to the Lambplan Advisory Committee. Neil Fogarty spoke about the maternal central progeny test last night. Lynton was involved in that. I'm sure he had both rams and involved in the breeder input and advisory committees around that. Lynton's, if you think of those 10-year brackets last night, you might remember Lynton should have stood up in the first one. I didn't actually see him, but he's a 29-year veteran of Lambplan, so a wealth of experience in breeding maternal-focused sheep. So Lynton, please come and share your thoughts and experiences with us. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for the invitation to come today. In starting this off, I'd just like to preface the talk by saying usually there's three ways of doing things: my way, your way and the right way. So what I'm talking about is my way, and I'm not necessarily saying it's the way everything needs to be done or anything like that. So we're based at Strathalbyn, where the little yellow pin is, in South Australia, and that green area you can see is basically our market, where we've been marketing rams over the last few years. So we have a philosophy in what we do. We've got to run the sheep commercially. You measure and record the production differences that exist, and we've got to look to the future. It's no use just looking at the current situation and saying that's the way it's always going to be, because things are going to change, and our success is really determined by how well we anticipate what we do and the future demands and the future things. So sometimes that actually means that we're collecting data in the hope that sometimes that we can pass that on to the sheep genetics team to actually do something within some years' time. But underlying everything, it's all about our clients. So what we do has to have value through our clients, or it's not worth doing, and we have to earn our place in the industry. The industry owes us nothing. We've got to just keep working and working and working to maintain what we do in the industry. So these are the Border Leicester sheep that we're breeding, and we feel quite pleased with what we've done. These are the rams, and that's what our clients are buying, but it's really for the maternal traits. They're Border Leicester. The Border Leicester has a role in the industry to produce as a maternal breed, and it's all about lambs. So even though we sell rams, it's all about the maternal side of the industry. So in preparation for the talk, I rang one of our probably most loyal clients and just asked him what he expects from us. So he expects live lambs. He expects us to have very good biosecurity and to ensure the rams are healthy. He expects to be able to come to our stud and have a good selection of rams that are in the top 10 to 20% of the traits that he's interested in. Data accuracy, he doesn't want to see that he's invested in rams where the values are going to change dramatically. He's also expecting us to make continue to make annual genetic gain, and the information that we provide to him has to be easy to interpret. So when I was talking to him, he said, "That's all very well, and this is one of our most loyal clients." But he said, as soon as you fail to produce those rams in the top specifications for him, he'll go to where he can get those rams. So there's just at this stage, we realise that there's no such thing as client loyalty anymore. So in living up to his expectations, we're using mate cell. We continually use a young rams, like a heap of ram lambs. When we do our culling, we actually do 2 culls. We do one in the office without looking at the data, and then we do another one in the yards. In the office, we look at the data without looking at the sheep, and then in the yards, we look at the sheep without looking at the data. So there's none of this, will I or won't I give it a second chance? It's all just fairly cut and dry. The other thing we do is we always give the ewe lambs an opportunity to join. Not always successful, but how do you define success? Some years we may only get 10% pregnant, and you'd say, what a waste of time. Turn it around. Those 10% got pregnant when other 90% couldn't. Great selection pressure. So going back to our clients, we've got ewes that are pregnant. They put live lambs on the ground. They're creating a nice maternal environment. They're demonstrating their ewe rearing ability. And of course, you've probably noticed that being a maternal breeder where it's all about lambs, all the photos have been about triplets. That's what everyone likes to take the photo of. But you'll see the mob on the left, that ewe has done a tremendous job of rearing 3 lambs all by herself. Compared to the ewe on the right, she still reared the 3 lambs, but you can see they're struggling. So moving on, this is a client, he's been able to produce good first cross lambs. He sells them as suckers, but he sells the ewe lambs at a breeder's sale, and there's very different specifications for those breeders that sell when they're purchasing their rams, there's very different specifications that those breeders will have when they're trying to sell in sale yards compared to breeding in themselves to retain the ewes to breed their prime lambs. And with that in mind, a little challenge for you all. Can you name one product that you'd want to go and purchase that you know less about than purchasing sheep out of sale yards? So this is ultimately what our business is all about, second cross lambs. And if you look in that photo, you'll notice the ewes have been shorn, and they're not that much bigger than what the lambs are. So again, it gets down to that stage of adult ewe size. You don't need big ewes. And, just going back, the people that are breeding for their own use are more likely to actually put emphasis on the traits like number of lambs weaned and those maternal traits, and probably WEC in their breeding decisions. The other people, the people that are just breeding to market in the yards are putting a lot more emphasis on a sheep that'll stand tall in the yards and present well. So it's two totally different markets, which actually makes it a bit harder for that. But yeah, that's... So the mating selection tools, we use MateCell, and out of that I use the ASBVs. I'm not a high index user, and in doing that I set thresholds within the traits that I say I'm not prepared to use anything under that threshold for a trait. Everything else may be right, but it's just the way I go. And in setting up for MateCell, I have 2 pieces of paper with me in setting the parameters. One is the percentile report, and the other is our flock genetic trend. The percentile report shows me where I want to be. I want to be up the top. So I'm trying to do that be as high. I need to know where the breeding values are that'll put me in that top 5%. However, having the genetic trend from the flock, that tells me that it may be unrealistic in those traits to be able to get there. So it shows my current position and also where I strive to be. So that's the important part of the whole thing. And I'm really looking forward to getting into these research breeding values, because I think that's going to actually enable us to dial up the litter size, and then also combine that with the rearing ability, and also the ewes rearing ability and the lamb survival side of things, so that we can set the number of the litter size and how many, and the likelihood of those ewes being able to rear those lambs. So to do that, good recording is essential. Reproduction is lowly heritable, but any inaccuracies that we have in that recording, actually all that does is just further reduces the heritability. And I still have this theory that reproduction is more heritable than what we give it credit for, but we just can't measure it. We currently aren't measuring it, the right traits, or we're unable to feed the information into the system to be able to enable us to actually come up with the outcomes of higher heritabilities for those traits. So being able to break them down into the components is going to be a big strong point. Recording the negatives is very positive because it's all about the range. And there's a lot of, I understand listening to other breeders, they're hesitant to actually record the deads, record the dries, and all that sort of stuff. But that's what gives you your range in within the data. So again, recording the negatives is very positive. And it's all about the differences within the group. So you've got to have your group structure right. It's not about how much or how many, it's all about the difference. So, you know, when you go just normally with the fat and muscle scanning, just saying, oh, they're not heavy enough and I don't want to do that. If they've all been running the same mob, it doesn't matter. Just get on and do it. The lack of information actually hurts your ability to make that gain. So again, just get on and do it. So going back to this ewe, so at preg scanning, we were told that she's carrying 3. We actually found out she had 4, but she only got 2 out by herself. Out of those, the other 2 had to be assisted to find their way out, and they were dead at birth. Ultimately, she only had 1 lamb because the other one of the twins was lost. She was carrying 18.7 kilos of lamb and only reared 1 of them. What a waste. That's a tremendous welfare issue, and hopefully what we'll be able to pick up again and have fed into the system and give us that lamb survival information that we really need to be fed into to be able to help us make the decision. Oh, sorry, wrong way. Data accuracy. Again, it's the similar story, and I'm not having a go at the preg scanners because they're doing things. This ewe gave birth to 3. She was preg scanned as carrying 2. She gave birth to 3, but she only reared 2. Again, the record isn't correct. Without us doing the lambing rounds, we would never have known that she was actually carrying the 3. By carrying 3, we know that actually affected the growth of the other 2, the 2 survivors. So, again, our lambing rounds we still feel are very important. So if you think that was hard, now this is 2 ewes on the top from the 2012 drop ewes that have had 6 lambing opportunities. A bit hard to see, so we'll just blow it up a bit. Now this ewe, she's had 13 lambs and reared 7. Now, so if you're not confused now, let me go the next step. Out of that, she produced, she had 3 ewe lambs, and the age of those ewe lambs showed that the last of the ewes wasn't old enough to join in this data. But both of those ewe lambs lambed as lambs, where she didn't. And also, every lamb they had survived. Also, for those people that only want to buy twins, in this year here, she actually had twins and reared both of them. So you would have been quite happy to buy the ram lamb, which is the bottom one, that year because she had twins. What about the rest of the years? It turns out that her number of lambs weaned is 11.8%. That's not too bad, but we'll go on to this other, the second ewe. She didn't lamb as a ewe lamb either, but she had she had 9 lambs and reared all of them, and again 4 ewe lambs that were given a chance to join. 3 of the 4 lambs lambed in the first year, and the other one still lambed later, with one of those ewe lambs producing, and 4 lambing opportunities, produced 5 lambs, but she only reared a single every year. So one year she had twins, but she didn't. The progeny of that ewe. And this gets back to, with the number of progeny, the rams actually may have 50 or 70 progeny. This ewe, over her lifetime, has only had 9 progeny, and then we've only got records on 4 of them. So that's why the heritability is low as well. It's just the numbers game. So just quickly running through our program. At mating, we record the ram in and the ram out with the same information, the date, the ewe weight, condition score, and the sire. We have a 6-week joining with the rams going in on Valentine's Day because that's appropriate, and the rams come out on April Fool's Day because that's appropriate too. We single sire mate, and we enter the data into the mating module as soon as we can. And that's one of the things I'm quite determined to do, is get that data into the system as soon as possible. So when we preg scan, we just preg scan for multiples and fetal age. And the dries are removed and sold. We don't give, other than the ewe lambs, we don't give them a second chance. So the lambing records, it's a date, UID, and birth type, birth weight, maternal behaviour score. It's our most important time of the year, and we do the lambing rounds twice a day, morning and night, and the sooner we get a tag into a lamb, the better. The lambs don't run very fast when they're wet, so that makes the life a lot easier. We drift lamb, and because we don't want any more than 20 lambs born in a paddock a day. And we use a carbon book in the ute, and that way that book remains in the ute, and the data goes into the house and is entered into the computer that night, and we validate. So with the validation, we find the errors, and we try and if there is a problem, we'll try and fix it the next day. So lamb marking, it's our last chance to find any recordings, so we have a list of anything where there's still a problem. We're looking for the ID, and the person on the vaccinated gum does that, and we're looking to actually do a roll call this next year on that. We're also looking to incorporate the fake codes this year. We see that now with the genomics information, it's going to be quite a benefit, I think, in actually being able to provide that extra information to separate out the reason why a lamb died, and that will also help with the accuracy later on. So at weaning, we're just recording the weight and the group because we're drift lambing, and then we'll draft 5 ways through the drafter with sex, rams going one way, ewes going the other, cull lambs, cull ewes that are mouthed at the time, and also we record the condition score of the ewe. That's used as the lambs. It's used as a roll call for rare type, and we go back and alter that, and we'll check the IDs in the lambs again against the electronic tag later. So good recording does take time and effort, and you've got to develop a system that works for you. The main requirement is commitment and to achieve the accuracy. And the people that say that they don't have time, they're really saying they don't care. So there will be errors, and you've just got to find them as soon as possible so they can be fixed and validate. And again, submit the data as soon as possible. I cannot understand why breeders leave it until after their next mating before they put the previous year's data in the system. They've lost that opportunity of using that information in that next mating. So embrace the differences. Don't mix up the influences of feeding and the breeding for reproduction results. As was the question before about what about condition score, if all the sheep have been run in the one group, that's your comparison. It's not about the fact that they put on weight over joining or anything like that. It's about what the whole group did and not necessarily about the condition score that they were in the paddock. So the differences within that group, record them, and I see my job as a seed stock producer not to make them all look the same, but to encourage the differences so that aids my selection pressure. That's it.
Thank you, Lynton. A great presentation, and obviously a high level of dedication in our comprehensive recording program. And as I say, Lynton submitted his first data 29 years ago, so it's been a long journey and obviously developed some very detailed systems. So the first question from before, there's the taxi number for those who like to jot that one down. Preg scanning, Lynton, it's a concern for you?
Look, everyone does their best, and we actually, again, with the preg scanning, I believe that we're using one of the better ones, but again, it's just, I highlighted that just to say that if you're going to use preg scan records on their own, don't accept it as gospel. There will be errors. So that was the point of doing that. But we do use the preg scan. I forgot to say in the process, we use the preg scanner more for working out the lambing date rather than actually separating the twins and singles out and feeding differently, because that will actually create different management groups if you've got a ewe lambing from the twin mob that only has a single or a single, because they're being fed differently. And it's all, for me, it's all about keeping those management groups as big as possible.
A valuable tool, but we have to accept that, as with most things, there is some degree of error, and we work with that as best we can. Question around litter size, with the component traits coming through, does that change how you might consider that?
I think it's more about our clients. We've got to actually collect the data on behalf of our clients to use. It's up to them to wind back the litter size or to dial that up using the technology. It's up to us to collect the data that does that. We need the range. So we still need to know the ewes that aren't capable of rearing their lambs. We need to know which ewes are capable, like that ewe with the triplets that was doing a fantastic job. We need to know which of those ewes are capable of doing that. So for me, it's not about winding back our litter size, it's about collecting the data so our clients can then go on and utilise that data to the best of their ability. We need that range.
Thanks, Lynton, and we'll just take that one last question as we wrap up for Morning Smoko. Use of other reproductive technologies, AI, ET, GIVIT, and so forth.
Yes, we have used AI, ET, and we've also, we haven't used GIVIT, but we did use MIVIT at one stage. Our dilemma is now finding semen that's going to take us forward, because most of it's with, the sheep are within our flock.
A nice challenge to have.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Lynton. Could you join me in thanking Lynton for that presentation and subsequent discussion?